Scared for a minute. Why, Coco? Um, greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, ascended of God for the fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know here at the Third Temple English Church of England as the Vicar of Christ or Jesus Christ. I have alongside me our clerk of the Third Temple English Church of England, Countess Walker from the House of Walker. Greetings.
Greetings, my lord.
All right, welcome to have you here today to be able to assist me in this marvelous task to uplift our people back to our ways and conditions of our forefathers and our foremothers. It is September 7th, 2024, which is equivalent to the birth year 2024. I greet you in the name of all our kindred and as well as all the laws, as well as the church that was the foundation for all things for the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers. I'm not going to hold you long. We're just going to dive right into it. But you know, this is really, really, really important day for us here at the Third Temple English Church of England. I just want to give a special out to my wife because when I first started out this movement, learning about English history, I was actually a Moor, and I don't know how I got started. It's just something about trying to connect the two. And my wife, she likes going to the thrift shop, and she actually bought this book from it. And from that book, I had my awakening, which I'll show you in a second. But I just want to give Countess Walker a couple of minutes to say a couple of words. So I digress. Countess Walker.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. It is my pleasure to be here with my lord, King Clifford Jefferson. I have been a member of the English Church for almost 3 years now, and I have been studying English history. And it's actually one of the most important things in my life is to study English history and to learn what we thought was an abstract history that is now concrete with dates, peoples, places, right here in this Anglosphere that we now call America. And I haven't found anything in the 3 years that my Lord King Clifford Jefferson has been teaching on this channel to contradict anything with the history. So I actually started with law. And then once I started studying our history, it all just opened up. And I'm very grateful for this channel. I'm very grateful for the King, the Queen, and all the members of the English Church. And I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. Well said, Countess. Once again, she's one of the saturated in the soul best suitable for a growth. So, you know, when the kings were raised, they were raised in the household of a family member. So they got the right tutorage, and most of the tutorage that they got in the household was based upon mononistic raising, mononistic usage, mononistic customs, which we'll talk about today. So today we're gonna go into the family of our ancestors who started it all. We pretty much from the time of my prior lectures, or pretty much out through all my lectures, we were on the outskirts. But today we're going to really take a good look inside to pretty see what went wrong. You know what I'm saying with our family. You know what I'm saying why it broke up. Because if you watch my last lecture, we know and we see that a house divided cannot stand. Okay. And we know that there's a separation of church and state here today. And we know that the church is what we depend upon for our relationship with the Creator. You know what I'm saying? As well as the laws that the government that we depend upon for our protection. But there must be must be a unification or union or fusion of it, which we somehow forgot. So we're going to talk about this all today, but we're going to have the pivotal, a pivotal example, which is King Edgar the Peaceful, which is our Christ, the Vicar of Christ. We're going to use his life, his history, to pretty much vamp out the story and pretty much tell her, make what it is that he's trying to get us to see in regards to the representation of Christ that he represented on earth, and which I am the reincarnation of in this present day. So without further ado, we're just going to show you a little prophecy, and then we're going to get into the priesthood, which verifies my king status. Well said, Countess Walker. You can pretty much, like I said, dive when you want to. I'll pretty much reiterate when I need you to read. I'll just call on you to read. Okay. So without further
Yes,
ado,
my
let's get
Lord.
started. All right. I'm going to first show a clip, which is pretty much how I got started, which is this book called the History of the Kings of Great Britain. All right. Let me just show it right quick. For a minute, I thought we were gonna have a problem with my YouTube being able to go live. I'm like, what? But nah, they didn't restrict me. So okay. This is the book that my wife received from a thrift shop. And what I want y'all to realize about this book is that we watch movies all day long about fantasy and folklore and mystery and myth. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time, it being the regular day world, but they happen to go into a library or a treasure chest. This time, it happened to be a thrift shop, and my wife acquired this book. All right, this book, a book written about some mythological or ancient people that were called kings and queens. All right, and as you can see on the front of the page, this is Henry the First, the son of William the Conqueror. Okay, this is the depiction of Henry the First, son of William the Conqueror. But what got my attention was this book, because when I opened up to the first page, the page after the table of content, I focused in on the picture, and the picture happened to look just like me. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. And from that day on, it brought me to uh, 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 the position of being an actual priest, a member to a priest to becoming a high priest. All right, because the one who they call the Messiah had to be anointed in the ways of his father. Okay, and we know that had to deal with religious, but within the religious law, there's a fusion of government. Okay, so the administration of government was a religious government, which we all have to understand to make our way back to the crusade, which we started, back to our way home. All right. So this is just a snippet of the book from what it is that now I truly and fully understand based upon a book that has now come to life based upon our representation of our ancestors through our charter, i.e., our incorporation, which is the religious rights that's protected by the First Amendment, which is based upon what we call the Establishment Clause. Okay? We call it the Clarendon Constitution. All right? We're going to talk about all that today. Countess, it's going to be a long night, so I hope you're ready for it. All right? So let's get
Yes.
busy. For all those who are viewing, please just take a quick snippet of this little narrative I have. It's just nothing but a picture. It's not no mythical anything. All right, let's see. All right. I stopped right there. That picture led me on my journey in which we're on today together. Okay. Which we're on today together. All right. So y'all are going to be able to see what we see. All right. The only way you're going to be able to see that if you have caught up with the lessons. All right. If you are caught up with the lessons. All right. The lessons that you have read and learned about, which is based upon a story that we're told about, have now become reality. You don't believe me? Let's show them. All right. All right. What I'm going to show you right now, we're going to go to our certificate of incorporation. Very important for us. That should show you that this is for real. This is for real for us. Let me just fix my layout. Sorry, bear with me. Greeting Esquire Burger from the House of Burgers. All right. Why ain't I seeing the screen myself? Bear with me. Stop sharing. I can't even see the screen. Okay, here we go. All right. Now, why is this so big? Oh, I see what I'm doing. Bear with me, y'all. Trying to get my screen right. Stop. Share. Okay. This is too big. Okay, here we go. All right, I apologize for the disturbance, y'all, everyone. Okay, here we go. As you can see, greetings, Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont. Okay. As you can see, this is our certificate of incorporation, i.e., our charter. Okay. There's the instrument number. There's a recording date back in 2022. Okay. So this proves that what we're doing here in 2024 is actually prophetic. Okay. It's prophetic. All right. Everyone thought we was making this up, but now it's going to become a reality based upon the work that we have put in here at the Third Timber English Church of England. All right. No other platform out there, no other church or religious society or body of politics have done what we done based upon attaching themselves back to a history, a body of politics, an ancestry that links yourself to rightful heirs of some type of kingship that we were so-called supposed to inherit. Okay? Very important. No one else talks like this. All right? As you can see, April 18th, 2022, a religious society. Greetings, Bishop Searchy from the House of Searchy. God was able to join us. A corporation soul. All of us know what a corporation soul is. There is the sale. All right? I'm just going to briefly go through this. This is our objective. Business type. This is a corporation soul, a royal peculiar, the crown. A corporation soul is a legal entity consisting of a single soul, incorporated office occupied by a single soul, natural person. This structure allows corporation, often religious corporation, or commonwealth governments to pass without interruption from one office holder to the next, giving position legal continuity with subsequent office holders having identical powers and possessions to their predecessors. So it means that what our ancestors had in the past, we now have the same power. Okay? Article 3. I'm just breezing through this. Business purpose. A means for orderly transfer of ecclesiastical property. Once again, a means for orderly transfer. Orderly. You know what I'm saying? Orderly. That means by some type of method that's in order or fashion. We call that operation of law. And means not by some type of criminal activity or some type of undermining, etc. It says by means for orderly transfer of ecclesiastical property, serving to keep the title within the denomination or religious society, in order to keep the religious property from being treated as an estate of the vicar of the church. What church is the question? Because we know vicar means representative, and it says vicar of the church. Y'all better be writing these terms down. We said we don't want it to fall into the hands of the wrong vicar of the church. There's only two churches, the English Church of England and the Church of England. Okay? The Church of England was created by the Roman Catholic Church, which now is based upon that was created under Henry VIII when he demolished the monasteries. Okay, which we'll get into tonight. All right, but then there's also the Vicar of Christ Church, which we're going to prove to you and prove to everyone tonight that King Edgar fit that description, which is me in the flesh. Okay, yeah, okay, yes, your Lord. All right, that's not boasting. That's not bragging. These are just the facts. A corporation shows the crown is the legal embodiment of the executive, legislative, judicial, governance, and the monarchy of each Commonwealth realm. So this is in our certificate of incorporation that's filed in the county. Okay. Now, what Countess Walker is going to read to you, all right, is my testimony. All right. It's my testimony of what happened from the day of our incorporation to the day when I went down to make a claim by filing the deed on behalf of the Third of England Church of England based upon the allodial right that we have to take land. Not the whole land. I just went for a little parcel of the state. Now they're going to force us to take the whole state. All right? As a result of the deed, as a result of them lacking the understanding of what it is that we were actually doing. All right? And they're just going to show you the conversation that I had with the county clerk office prior to me coming down there based upon what it is that I, as King, was going to do. And then we're going to read a report from the probable cause affidavit that was created by the state of New Jersey on behalf of what we call the complainant, which was a sheriff, okay, Sheriff Hooper, all right, and executed by the county prosecutor, which they have failed to do. It's almost 8 months now, and there has been no indictment, which means that it's a malicious prosecution. And we all know what's happening next. Okay? So follow suit. Check it out. Countess Walker.
Okay.
You can take your time. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
All right. Take it away. Now, once
Prepared
again,
by
this is my testimony. All right. This is my testimony based upon what happened. Okay. Everybody needs to know what's going on. Please. This is just prophecy at its best. Those who understand where what it is that we do will see the prophecy and what it is that I'm bringing to you today. Read on. I'm gonna keep quiet.
discovery, admissions, testimony, attestation. Number one, on April 18th, 2022 at 11:37 a.m., King Clifford Jefferson, presented and filed with the county
Can you say
clerk.
that? Yeah.
Yes, Don DeMito, a certificate of incorporation of the Third Temple English Church of England. King and heir successors as a corporation sole. Number 2, the file number instrument 2022-08404, book page 018897, pages 1900 to 1912, 13 pages, stamped recording with Nancy J. Pinkin, county clerk, pursuant to New Jersey Revised Statutes A 46:26A-5. Our certificate of incorporation of the Third Temple English Church of England, King and heirs, successors as a corporation sole, was filed pursuant to New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28, 2024, saving of rights under charters granted by Great Britain, revised 1877, page 960.
You don't have to read all of it. You don't have to read none of this.
Okay. Being section 12 of an act entitled An Act to Incorporate the Trustees of Religious Societies, approved April 19th, 1876, saved from repeal. This section vested property held under charters of incorporation granted by Great Britain, incorporations created in place thereof.
Stop right there. Okay, so this statute incorporated property that was held by Great Britain and corporations in place thereof. So that means corporations are holding on to property that don't belong to them. It actually belongs to Great Britain, i.e. the crown. Great Britain just left it there. That's why it became what we call estate, because it's under what we call eminent domain power, because we died interstate. We wasn't around. So if nobody's around, then it becomes what they call estates under what they call eminent domain, or what we call prescription of sovereignty, or what they call compulsory purchase. All right? That's how land is transferred. If you take the land, you take everything that comes with it. That sounds about right, Counted, right?
Yes.
Okay, you can continue.
This section, you went up to.
You have.
Okay. This section vested property held under charters of incorporation granted by Great Britain, incorporations created in place thereof. Number 4, New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-43.9. The consolidated corporation shall have and may exercise all powers conferred by the representative certificates of incorporations or charters of the constituent corporations, and in particular, the powers conferred by the Article 5 of Chapter 1 of Title 16 of the Revised Statute, so far as the same are not inconsistent with this act, are necessary or convenient to the furtherance of its objects, and are in accordance with the doctrine, government, discipline,
Read that
and
part again. You heard that? It said doctrine and government. It didn't just say religious side. It said doctrine and government. So that means that our government has a doctrine that governs has a doctrine that governs the government. Okay? Continue.
Okay, I'll start over. The consolidated corporation shall have and may exercise all powers conferred by the representative certificates of incorporation or charters of the constituent corporations, and in particular, the powers conferred by Article 5 of Chapter 1 of Title 16 of the Revised Statutes, so far as the same are not inconsistent with this act, are necessary or convenient to the furtherance of its objects, and are in accordance with the doctrine, government, discipline, and usages of the church or religious denomination to the jurisdiction of which the constituent corporations were subject. It shall have, among other powers, the powers to invest, change the investments of, and reinvest its endowment and funds in such investments, whether or not prescribed by statute, and in such matters as it shall deem proper.
You can go to 5 now.
New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-4. Every religious society or congregation incorporated by virtue of any law of this state shall have power to A, have perpetual succession as such corporation, B, sue and be sued, plead and be impleaded in any court, C, adopt and use a common seal and alter and renew the same at pleasure, D, appoint such officers, agents, and employees as may be required for its properties, institutions, and business, E, make bylaws and rules consistent with law for the regulation and management of its affairs, properties, and institutions. F, acquire property, receive, have, and hold, and take by devise, bequest, or gift without limit, real and personal property of all kinds, church edifices, schoolhouses, college buildings, parsonages, sister houses, hospitals, orphan asylums, and all other kinds of religious, ecclesiastical, educational, and charitable institutions, and the lands whereon the same are and may be erected, and
Stop.
cemeteries.
Did you hear that? In the land for which they sit on. Not just the building, but the land from which they sit on, we have the power to acquire. Continue on from where you left off.
And cemeteries or burial places, and any real estate suitable for any and all said properties and purposes. G, lease, grant, sell, and dispose of any and or any part of such properties. H, borrow money for the purpose of the corporation and to give bonds and mortgages therefore on any part of its property. I, have the management, direction, and control of all the civil and temporal affairs of the congregation, church, or parish. J, exercise any corporate powers necessary and proper for the carrying out of the above enumerated powers and the purposes of the corporation and its institutions.
So everything Council just read is within our certificate of incorporation. That's just what I testified to about the power I had, which apparently they didn't recognize. So in the events that occurred in regards to the probable cause, which they based their arrest upon, this is the events that originated prior to me going up there, filing the actual deed on behalf of our people. Okay, because this was going to be our temple. All right, this was going to be our temple, $1 million property for our temple. All right, our monastery. All right, this is what I'm doing for y'all on behalf of my understanding of the law, which I incorporated in teaching all of you so that y'all can take your positions as officers, employees, etc., as the statute said. That makes sense, Countess Walker?
Yes, my lord.
Okay. Events that occurred.
Constructive notice. On Tuesday, His Majesty called the county clerk's office to inform them that I would be visiting the clerk's office on February 20, 2024 to file a religious deed.
Stop.
I informed.
Stop right there. So that's 2 years later. That's 2 years later. I already incorporated in 2022. I come back 2 years later to record a deed, which is now. Go ahead.
I informed you that I have a religious ID and that I no longer use the prior method used by the state of New Jersey as a form of identification. She replied, no problem. I'll meet you downstairs in the lobby. On Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, at approximately 13:30 hours, His Majesty King Clifford Jefferson arrived at the Middlesex County Recorder's Office to file a deed of conveyance by the customary practice of livery and season of the property, situated on allodial land pursuant to New Jersey Revised Statute 46:3-6, gifts, grants, and conveyances by state allodial, livery, and law, whereby the properties went within sight of the land and the transferor declared to the recipient that possession was given, followed by the recipient.
Stop right there. So New Jersey by statute 46:3-6 says that the land is allodial. That land that was allodial allowed me to file under the process called livery of season, which is called livery of law, because our ancestors prophesied it long time ago. It ain't like they gave us a deed. They established it by law. There's only two ways: library of deed and library of law. Okay, which is an ancient ceremony for conveyance of property. We didn't do it by deed because didn't nobody give us a deed. They don't want to give us a deed now to own any property. So the only way we can obtain some property is to obtain the property that was left a long time ago, and the only way we can do that is by operation of law. That's why I did it by library and law, because the word library means delivery in law. Continue.
All right. Livery and law, whereby the properties went within sight of the land, and the transferor declared to the recipient that possession was being given, followed by the recipient entering onto the land.
Stop right there. And don't that sound like something that the Jews were prophesied about, them going to some land that was prophesied by God, and when they got there, they was able to go there, right? That's what it sounds like, that what we're reading. All right, continue. 7.
The turf and twig ceremony, dated from the feudal era, was used regularly in early colonial America, allowing the English and the Scottish, after 1707, turned the British, by virtue of their monarchs' claims to take sovereign possession over unclaimed lands. The lucky new commoner goes on his given acre and cuts a turf from the selected site and drops 2 shillings into the hole made. The high steward of the county then twitches him with a twig and sticks the twig into the turf, then hands it to him, saying, "This turf and twig I give to thee as free and as Ethelstan gave to me. And I hope, a loving brother, thou will be." The high steward then.
Stop. Okay. So Asselton was the grandson of Alfred the Great, the son of Edward the Elder. And they're talking about a ceremony here in North America, because this is how William Penn received Pennsylvania, based upon one of the type, library of deed. He created a fraudulent deed. He couldn't do it by law because that was the ancient practice left for us. All right? But it was up for us to figure that out. This is what we did. No other society, no other group, no other legal scholar, no other person has made the connection but I, your king. All right, continue.
This turf and twig I give to thee as free as Ethelstan gave to me, and I hope, a loving brother, thou will be. The high steward then takes the money out of the hole, and the new landowner replaces the turf. His Majesty checked in with the officers at the front desk, where I presented my religious ID, which was not accepted by the officer on account that they require a corporate ID from the state of New Jersey. The clerk came down from the 4th floor to assist me with the filing of said instrument. The clerk who assisted me with the filing of the certificate of incorporation on April 18th, 2022, was the same clerk who came down to assist on February 20th, 2024.
Okay.
Conversation.
So 1 second. So 2 years go by. The same clerk who helped me file our certificate of incorporation as me being the king came down again 2 years later to assist me with filing this deed. And as a result of me filing this deed based upon statute, she want to have me locked up as if I did something wrong. She want to have your king locked up as if I did something wrong. Okay? So this is a conversation I had when I got to the county clerk's office. Let's talk about it.
Okay. February 20th, 2024, the clerk began the conversation by asking me, "Let me see what you have." I then handed the deed to her. She then looked at the face of the deed, then replied that I cannot accept this filing. I asked her why you wouldn't accept it. She replied that we don't accept these types of documents. This is the same exact statement that she made when I presented the certificate of incorporation for filing. I then asked her what would be acceptable form of filing. I then referenced a copy of a deed as shown in the book, the 12th edition, Essentials of New Jersey Real Estate by Edith Lank and Joan M. Soybeck. I then asked her, would this example suffice? Her reply was yes. I then asked her if I styled the deed exactly like the one displayed in this real estate book, would you file it? Her reply was yes. I then asked her, was there any other document I needed? She replied, yes. You need the seller and buyer's affidavit of consideration and the seller's residency certification exemption. Witnesses, 2 security officers stationed at front desk, race black. February 21st, 2024, His Majesty King Clifford Jefferson returns to the Middlesex County Clerk on the day in question. When I meet up with Don Demico and her boss, who had a malicious disposition on her face, she looks over the documents, then walks off with them with unsettling discontent without saying a word. His Majesty waited in the lobby, conversating with one of the security guards who was on post the previous day, February 20th, 2024. Shortly after, His Majesty was surrounded by multiple sheriff officers who declared I, King Clifford Jefferson, was charged with a criminal complaint. I then asked the officers, did they have a lawful warrant signed by a judge? The arresting officers said, no, we don't. I was maliciously prosecuted under the color of authority and color of law. His Majesty was then arrested, fingerprinted, and booked by sheriff officers, where I was searched, seized personal and private property without cause. His Majesty was also confined to a freezing dungeon-like cell or prison. His Majesty was forced to strip naked and bend over and cough. His Majesty was given 1 pair of socks, 1 pair of underwear, 1 t-shirt with a thin blanket and 2 thin sheets, and served rations of food that even a hungry dog would turn his nose from. Simply put, modern day slavery at its best.
Okay. So this is what I had to go to get to this point. All right. Our ancestors said they're not going to let me in the front door. They're not going to let us file a civil claim based upon what it is. We had to go through the back door in a criminal complaint. That way it can be tried by a jury. That way the judge can't say nothing. The prosecutor can't say nothing. Even if they wanted to, it's left for the jury to decide. Now, our forefathers thought ahead of time to put your king in this predicament. Why? Because let's read what the affidavit of probable cause say, which truly shows that they put their foot in their mouth. Let's see. Let me show you the sheriff officer. You say something, Countess?
Do you want me to read?
Yeah, 1 second. This is the sheriff officer The complaining sheriff officer. Now, I grew up with this sheriff officer. Let me show you. This is the complainant. This is the one who goes down, up, and writes the complaint that was created by the clerk, okay, in 2024. She already knew of these from 2022 when we incorporated as King Clifford Jefferson. So she already know I'm me as King Clifford Jefferson. So when I went down to file a deed as King Clifford Jefferson, she had a problem with that because she read that statute. It said Elordio. She was like, oh my God, we in trouble. So they said, well, the only thing we can do is act like he's stealing property. Why did they do that? Let's see why. This is the one. Because I let him know. I told him, you arrested the wrong person, brother. Y'all work for me. And y'all going to see y'all work for me. Why? This is the reason why they can't go to a jury based upon their own statements. This is the malicious prosecution and an affirmative defense because what they actually accused me of, they're doing. Let's see it for yourself. Tell me one person, one person that representing any type of deity, Christ, Savior, Liberator, has done what I've done, okay, for his people. Show me one. All right, I went to jail for my people to get this result. Watch this result. This is the actual proof, evidence that they so-called have on your king. All right, you know the state of New Jersey versus Clifford Jefferson, not King Clifford Jefferson. But watch what the county clerk office say. Read it for him, Countess.
Okay. Start where the description of relevant facts.
Yeah.
Okay. On Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, at approximately 13:30 hours, I was requested by the administration building Meadows sheriff officers for an ongoing situation. I was directed to the fourth floor county clerk's office where I met with Dawn D'Amico, special deputy clerk. She informed me that King Clifford Jefferson was present the day before, Tuesday, 2020-24, attempting to transfer the deed for 7 Golden Pond Drive, Milltown, New Jersey, 08850 into his name without any of the appropriate documents.
Stop. Stop. Now, do you see the big mistake she made? She called me King Clifford Jefferson. Why would you do that? Why would you make a statement calling me? Because this is the affidavit of probable cause. You got to convince the jury that King Clifford Jefferson actually was stealing land. How can I be stealing land and I'm the king? Right. Okay, continue to read.
When Mrs. D'Amico explained this to him, he became argumentative and agitated before exiting the building. Mr. Jefferson had returned today, Wednesday, 2/21/24, and submitted false deed documentation for the same Milltown address. Don DeMio explained that the Milltown property in question was currently legally being sold by an estate to another individual. Stop. At that time,
that's another mistake she made. You just admitted that you were selling land to somebody else. When I'm telling you that land belongs to the king, which you called me in the same document. Okay, and you know I was the king because I was incorporated 2 years ago as king. So it ain't like you didn't know who I was because you called me by name. You addressed me as King Clifford Jefferson. I was filed in the land for land as King Clifford Jefferson, not as Clifford Jefferson. As King Clifford Jefferson, when this complaint was filed, Do you see it say King Clifford Jefferson? No. When my public defender announced me for the record, he said King Clifford Jefferson. Why? He read this damn police report and said, "Oh my God, they made the biggest mistake of their life." It said it right here. The only witness that you got who filed a complaint on me called me by name, King Clifford Jefferson, and you told him that, hold up, King, you can't have your property because we're busy selling it. Now imagine a prosecutor going to a jury trying to convince them that what I was doing was actually wrong. You can't do it because we incorporated, as you can see in our certificate of incorporation, as the king. You knew that. That's the reason why the only way you can go was to have me get me locked up. But our ancestors thought better. They said, you know what? The only way we can bring this matter out in the open is to let the king suffer in the night in jail, so that when it's tried in a criminal case, because under the Constitution you have the right to a trial by jury, and if it's tried by jury, they're gonna have to go based off this police report, affidavit of probable cause, where she called him king. Ain't gonna be no trial. The jury gonna say, hell, he right. She called him king. That's prophecy. It ain't even happened yet, but we know it's gonna happen because they can't dismiss it. Once they dismiss it, then that means that I was never wrong from the door. Any words, Countess Middleton? Countess Walker?
I did have a question concerning deed, because the deed is a new process because we didn't have that when we had library of season and library of law. How do we acquire property without their deed process?
Well, the way it was done is a result of how our ancestors did it. But because we're not linked to our ancestors, we're assumed to be dead and gone. English people the law is here, the government's here, the custom is here, but we don't have the people. So that means that everybody's estate is interstate, meaning that it's automatically it speaks to the sovereign power, whether it's de facto or de jure. Right now, under the crown, it was de jure. When the crown, a British minority, gave it to the colonies, which was under what we call separation of church and state, it became bona vacantinia, abandoned property. So the states takes it by what they call eminent domain power. Okay, and then they make money off it. And the highest form of ownership in the states or the United States is fee simple. That means there's an encumbrance in it, right? Land that's free is allodial, free and clear, and the only one that owns land free and clear is allodial. And it's allodial, why? Because if no heirs is there owning the land, then it goes back to the king because the king one gave the charters out. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions? No more questions. What do you think about uh uh the level of suspicion based upon the actions that were committed by the state, which we can fraudulently see here, by admittedly and openly the only witness that they got to even validate that there was an actual crime is the one who's calling me by the name of King. And if you calling me King, then Clifford Jefferson is irrelevant now, because that's an office. That's a corporation soul. Clifford Jefferson, no matter, it doesn't care. Because remember, office, people change, positions don't. So it's the office that's what's at stake. Who's sitting in that office? It could be anybody sitting in that office as king. No one chose to do it. That's the purpose of intent for today's lesson. The representation of Christ, or the Vicar of Christ, or the representation of the Anointed One, who was able to do what it is that I just did. Going back to time of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we call the Anointed One, the representation of the anointed Christ on earth. This is what King Edgar represented, and this is what we're going to talk about today. And I am the manifestation of that revelation that he prophesied back in his day and time, because the word Christ simply means the anointed. Anybody can be the anointed. A lot of people claim to be anointed, but if you're anointed, can you do what I just did? Can you actually do what I just did? I got the county clerk to call me King Clifford Jefferson out of her own words. So if you call me King Clifford Jefferson, then this is who I am. You made that mistake, and then you made the mistake and said that you were selling property so the king can't have it. That's another mistake you made. Why? Because if they can't prove I did anything wrong, in regards to you saying that I was selling property that don't belong to me, then why hasn't there been an indictment? Why hasn't there? It's almost 8 months now. My public defender said he's moving for a dismissal for malicious prosecution, which is this. Let's move here. This is what comes
Well,
next. Go ahead.
I had one thing to point out before you go. When the county clerk said that you submitted false deed documentation,
Yes,
there was no statute to justify what do they mean that your documentation was false. So they didn't even substantiate their claim.
exactly. You were saying it was false under what pretense? Because everything I just showed you was based upon the statute. She just was upset that when I filed this the for a parcel of the state, it was under 46:3-6, which was a allodial. That meant that everything within that property no one can touch, because I only went for a parcel estate. I just was trying it out. I was just playing with the power. Okay, so if they can't prove me wrong based upon that one statute which says all of New Jersey is allodial, guess what? Now you got to give me all of New Jersey, because I just don't want that one property now. I want the whole state. Give me what the statute says. The statute says the land is allodial, and if it's allodial, that means New Jersey don't have an interest in it. The only person can have an interest is either the king or the heirs. Ain't no heirs, so that means it reverts back to the king. That's the purpose and the concept of the crown. We know this already. We study this. All right. This is why it's beautiful to be in this living position right now, because we see what we study coming to take form. Okay, let's move forward. All right. Now we can move on with the lesson. All right. This is malicious prosecution. You're just going to read these 4 steps and we're going to move on. Action based upon prior criminal proceedings. You're right, Bishop Searcy. If you want to receive land, you have to petition the king. Petition. If somebody take your land, you have to do what? Petition the king. If the king ain't there, you petition his council. All right. Well said. All right. Just read this for us, Countess. Malicious prosecution.
Malicious prosecution, action based upon a prior criminal proceeding. A. Elements of a malicious prosecution. An action of law for malicious prosecution based upon a prior criminal judicial proceeding consists of several elements. First, the plaintiff must establish the existence of a criminal judicial proceeding against him or her. On this subject, the undisputed facts are: state the nature of the criminal charge instituted against the plaintiff, the name of the judicial tribunal in which it was instituted. Second,
Stop. So this is a template. They actually showing you how to do it. They showing you right now how to file a claim for malicious prosecution when they fail to indict you, bring a claim against you, and there's no indictment. That's malicious, especially when I'm a king. You saying I wasn't a king, I'm telling you I am a king, and then I win as a king, oh yeah, you best believe it's going to be malicious. All right? Based upon the first element. Continue to read.
Second, the plaintiff must establish that the defendant was responsible for or caused the proceeding to be instituted against him or her. On this subject, the undisputed facts are: state what the defendant did to initiate the criminal judicial proceeding against the plaintiff, such as signing a complaint. Third,
We already seen that, y'all. We seen that. That one affidavit of probable cause. That's my whole justification for malicious prosecution. I was the king. She said she took my land. She admitted it. They filed a claim as if I committed a crime. They was not able to prove it. That's a malicious prosecution. All right, let's read.
Third, the plaintiff must establish that the criminal proceeding terminated favorably to him or her, or in a manner not adverse to him or her.
Right.
On this subject, the undisputed facts are: state facts relating to the nature of the termination, such as a termination in his or her favor, a failure of the grand jury to indict, a failure of the magistrate to find prima facie case, a voluntary withdrawal or abandonment, etc. Fourth, the plaintiff must establish a lack of reasonable or probable cause for the criminal prosecution. On this subject, there is a sharp conflict in the proofs.
Okay.
Note
So
to
we
judge.
met our burden. We met our burden right there just from this. Just from that. We met our burden. This is the reason why the prosecutor can't go to the judge with this. The judge told him, you need to rethink this. This public defender just went up and called this man king. He called him king. The judge didn't say one word. He knew better than to say anything. That would have opened Pandora's box. You go to a jury, show the jury list, guess what? That's going to open Pandora's box. No matter, it's a door you can't shut now. She put her foot in her mouth and called me King Clifford Jefferson. That was the number one mistake that she made. Why? Because that's premeditated. That's malicious now. Why? Because you knew 2 years ago who I was. Whether you read the affidavit or instrument or charter or not, it's irrelevant. You should have read it. You didn't. It's just like that book sitting in that thrift shop, nobody collecting dust. But when I collected that book, dusted up, like, oh, sweat. There's some potions up in this bad boy. Let me see if one works. I casted a spell. Oh, sweat. It's about to happen. That's the prophecy. We're about to become the Anglo-Saxon Berbers again in 2024. Those who said we were dead and gone now have to say we are alive and well. Why? Because all the land that belonged to those who were dead and gone, I now have to give to you. And that's who said it? In order for you to receive land, you must petition the king or by way of prerogative writ. Those are only two. Why? Because those are the prerogatives of the crown. All right. So without further ado, let's get an inside view on the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing today as the reincarnation or the personification or the incorporation of who we call King Edgar the Peaceful, which to us is the Vicar of Christ. I'm not saying it. He's going to say it, and he's going to have other people qualify it. Yes, he is the Christ. It ain't the Pope. It's not the Pope. Okay? So this is one of the beautiful lessons. Once again, I know you like what you've seen thus far. So this is a warning to you all that you need to be a part of the age of the Messiah. 2024 is the age of the return of the Messiah. We done went through that. 6,000 years. The Hebrew book says 5784, which is 2024 to you, which is 2974 for us. It's the age of my return. and I have returned, because the word Christ and Messiah means the same, the anointed. And the Christ comes back for his anointed. We got one sitting up right here, Countess Middleton. She's anointed. She recognized well when she said, she ain't got no problem saying my Lord. She don't have a problem with that. I would feel embarrassed to be up here calling somebody my Lord or King. She ain't got no problem with that. Why? Because she sees the living proof right here. What individual you have showing you living proof about this man that he claimed to be incarnated? Why? Because I know him. I am him because I know him. You don't think I do? Let's see. Let's see. If I don't know who this guy is and his family. I know his family. I know his brothers. I know his uncles. I know who raised them. I know who taught him. I know what daughter he had. Look, let's read it for ourselves. Okay, so you can have no excuse that of what required every member of the Third Tip English Church of England. Okay, because the house divided, it cannot stand. Countess, I'm gonna have you here at least about 9:30, 10 o'clock. You think you can hold on?
Yes, my
Okay,
Lord.
that's what I'm talking about. All right, let's rock. Let's start. Let's see. Let's start here. The Establishment Clause. We're gonna walk through time with the Establishment Clause. All right. Matter of fact, let's start with the separation of church and state. Let's start there. We already talked about this. Now, in fact, we ain't gonna start there. We're gonna start from the original position. Let's start there. All right. The original position. All right. We are in our original positions, me and Countess Walker, okay? And every member of the Third Tip English Church of England, if you study. We are in our original position, and that came by way of what we call a thought experiment, okay? It took a process for us to become who we are today. It said we are what our forefathers were without doubt or contradiction. When we didn't know it, we weren't acting like that. When we know it, we must be who we are. Okay? If not, then you're not who you are. So read the first paragraph of this paragraph on Wikipedia. And they do have sources for all those who don't want to rely on Wikipedia. Because I'm pretty much, if you read somebody else's book, it's going to pretty much say the same thing you see in Wikipedia. Because everybody's narrating. Everybody's telling a story other than the person who the story is actually about. Okay, it's about what they think. Some people don't really want to talk about the individual for what he represented, as you can see about our Jesus Christ. They don't want to talk about him based upon what he represented. That's why nobody come and view our channel based upon what we talking about. Why? Because it's not for them. All right. So understand this from the original thought experiment, which you need to understand this matrix. Read the first paragraph, Countess Walker.
The original position, OP, often referred to as the veil of ignorance, is a thought experiment used for reasoning about the principles that should structure a society based on mutual dependence. The phrases original position and veil of ignorance were coined by the American philosopher John Rawls, but the thought experiment itself was developed by William Vickery and John Harsanyi in early writings.
Stop. Okay, so you have two things: a thought experiment based upon original position and based upon a veil of ignorance. Okay, so that means the original position that we are all in is based upon a veil of ignorance, because one time we didn't know this history that we're talking about now. So we were all in a state of ignorance. We had to find out about this, and that depends upon who taught you. As I always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Time never was when man and woman was not. As the life and time become when they begin, the time will come when there will be no more. So we can't rely on somebody to tell our story, because our story will become a mystery to us, because it's not our story. We got to go to our own people, and how we know it, we have to go to the original position based upon a thought experiment. Yes, you have to use your mind, brothers and sisters. All right? You have to use your mind, not just your senses, your mind. Why? Let's just read the visual depiction that John Rawl gives in the box before we move on.
A virtual depiction of philosopher John Rawls' hypothetical veil of ignorance. Citizens making choices about their society are asked to make them from an original position of equality left behind a veil of ignorance, wall center, without knowing what gender, race, abilities, tastes, wealth, or position in society they will have. Rawls claimed that this would cause them to choose fair policies. As noted elsewhere in this article, philosopher and law professor Harold Anthony Lloyd argues that such a veil of ignorance is real rather than hypothetical and drives the thoughtful egotist to degrees of altruism.
Okay. So now that we see the game that's being played on us based upon a thought experiment caused by somebody else, based upon the original position that they put us in, which is ignorance. Okay? Our ancestors didn't put us in the state of ignorance. We forgot our ancestors who were not ignorant. Okay? Why? Why? It's because the religious church, the religious customs is what we forgot. Okay? How? I'm going to prove it to you. Let's look at separation of church and state. Read right here. Read the first paragraph.
Separation of church and state is a metaphor paraphrased by Thomas Jefferson and used by others in discussion of the Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
That's fine. So Congress should make no religion respecting to make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So that's the vision. Now, last lesson said a house divided cannot stand. If you can practice in the religion, that means it ain't all the same religion. You can agree, counters?
Yes, my lord.
So you can believe whatever you want to believe. All right, they don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? So as a result of that, what happens? Let's see what Thomas Jefferson said it. Because Thomas Jefferson bears the same name as Jefferson. But he ain't no Englishman. All right? He ain't no Englishman like I am. All right. Let's see what he say about the concept of separation of church and state, because we know church is affiliated with God or the God concept, and state deals with a body of politics or a social compact that's governed by a body of politics. And somewhere between those two, the people got to fit. Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the state or are you going to choose the church? People, you got a choice to make today. Are you going to choose the church or the state? I know you ain't going to choose the state because look where you're at now. Look what's going on now, and look what might happen. You better go back to the church because based upon this lesson, you ain't gonna never see the church explained like it is today. All right. Let's see what Thomas Jefferson says about what's going to happen as a result of the separation of church and state prior to it being a fusion of government. That's what he say before we move forward.
Jefferson wrote, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship than the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and no opinion and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation in behalf of the rights of conscience, I shall see with sincere satisfaction the progress of these sentiments which tend to restore to man all his natural rights, convinced he has no natural right in opposition to his social duties.
Okay, so as we can see, they made their choice. They chose the state rather than the church. All right? They chose to deal with their individual beliefs, their individual wants, their individual desires, other than the desires, the individual wants, the individual needs of the whole. Okay? We're not thinking that way. We're thinking about the whole. All right? Whether you want it or not, this is for the whole. Care what you want in your individual uh, 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 fruition or your individual thoughts or your individual passions. This is about the whole because apparently the founding fathers wasn't thinking about the whole. How we know it? Let's read what he say. And we're gonna move on from here. Go ahead.
Okay. When they, the church, have opened a gap in the
Oh,
hedge
read
or
this part.
wall of,
Read this part.
okay. Jefferson reflects other thinkers, including Roger Williams, a Baptist dissenter and founder of the Providence, Rhode Island. He wrote, when the church has opened a gap in the hedge or wall of separation between the garden of the church and the wilderness of the world, God hath ever broke down the wall itself, removed the candlestick, etc., and made his garden a wilderness as it is this day. And that therefore, if he will ever please to restore his garden and paradise again, it must of necessity be walled in particularly unto himself from the world, and all that be saved out of the world are to be transplanted out of the wilderness of the world.
Did y'all hear that?
So
So
that
he's
means
telling
the
you the
church.
candlestick has been removed based upon the light that shines in the garden. Not the world. The world is wicked. You know what I'm saying? So if you choose the world, i.e., state, then that means you're going to be subject to the calamity that come from the world because God ain't there. God dwells in the church. All right. And they gave you a church that God ain't there because the God you serve and his church is somewhere in the sky. All right. Prior to Thomas Jefferson separated, somewhere God's church was here on earth. It's just how his church was functioning at that time was the problem. And that's what we're going to talk about. How God's kingdom here on earth was functioning improperly. Okay? And it broke down. This is what we're going to talk about today. Not that spook stuff that King James was talking about in that Bible. Okay? We're going to get to nitty gritty. We're going to go inside our Jesus Christ house, his house. Okay? And realize that what was happening in the days of our Christ-like entity, King Edgar the Peaceful, is happening today. And it's going to take King Edgar the Peaceful to fix what his predecessors did, and it's going to take me to fix what my predecessors did. All right? I'm going to show you that in this present lesson. All right? So without further ado, let's get busy. Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause. Read the first part of the Establishment Clause.
In the United States law, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, together with that amendment's Free Exercise Clause, form the constitutional right of religion. The Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause together reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
That was a dummy. That was the bait that we took. That was the bait that they used to fish us all in. That right there. That clause right there is how they got us. How? Let me show you. Because when they created that clause, they took the property along with it. All right? That's how they took our property. That's how they took our customs. This is how they took our laws. This is how they took our history. This is how they took our economy. It's through this establishment clause by freedom of religion. How we know it? Because prior to that, the freedom of religion was based upon other precedents. All right? We don't want to go to the 1689 Bill of Rights because we know that that deals with the Scottish King, the Scottish monarch, which is a British monarch that originated in 1707. All right, we want to predate them because we are Anglo-Saxon birthers. So the only way we can predate them is go to what existed before them, which is called the Clarendon Constitution. Let's read the Clarendon Constitution because that was the precedent for the Establishment Act, and we know what the word "establish" means: to create. To establish means to create. They created something new. Before you created that new clause, what was there prior to that? Right? What was the precedent before that? Let's find it out because something tells it pertains to us. Let's find it right there. We ain't gonna read the rest of this mess. This was the first precedent is based upon. Read it.
Okay, the clause was based on a number of precedents,
Precedents.
including the constitutions of Clarendon, the Bill of Rights 1689, and the first constitutions of Philadelphia and New Jersey. An initial draft by John Dickinson was prepared in conjunction with his drafting the Articles of Confederation.
That's it.
In
That's fine. Okay.
in
That's
1789,
fine. That's fine right there. So the Establishment Clause is based upon the precedents of the Constitution of Clarendon, not the Bill of Rights of 1689. Some chose that. Some also chose the Constitution of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Some even chose the Articles of Confederation. We ain't choosing neither one of them because they don't apply to us. We're going to check out the first one, which was the Constitution of Clarendon. And what is the Constitution of Clarendon? Let's read that real quick.
the constitutions of Clarendon were a set of legislative procedures passed by Henry II of England in 1164. The constitutions were composed of 16 articles and represent an attempt to restrict ecclesiastical privileges and curb the power of the church courts and the extent of papal authority in England. In the archaic conditions of William II's Precedor,
Yeah.
Stephen reigned from 1135 to 1154. The church had extended its jurisdiction by taking advantage of the weaknesses of royal authority. The constitutions were claimed to restore the law as it was observed during the reign of Henry I, 1100 to 1135. The
That's fine.
constitutions.
That's fine. That's fine. So the Constitution of Clarendon was created in 1164. It was created as a result of the power that the ecclesiastical churches were having in regards to property that they acquired as a result of what they call or what they said anarchic conditions. Anarchic condition. We all heard about the anarchy, right? So we have the Constitution of Clarendon, which was the basis for the Establishment Clause of the United States Constitution First Amendment. And that's rooted in the presence of the Constitution of Clarendon going all the way back to the 12th century, dealing as a result of some conditions that happened as a result of some family. And who is this family? The Plantagenet crown, who we represent. We represent the Plantagenet crown. Now we're going back through history as a result of our certificate of incorporation because this is our family. And if we're going to live out that life, we must know that family life of our family and be able to tell our story of where we went wrong, how we did it, and how we're going to correct it, and how we're going to go forward from there. That makes sense, Countess?
Yes, my lord.
Okay, so let's get there. So the Constitution of Clarendon resulted from the anarchic condition. This is what we call the anarchy, everyone. The anarchy. So let's look at that real quick. The anarchy. I'm be jumping and skipping. See, only a king can do that. I got all these tabs over here on the left side, and I'm connect every one of them. Every one of them I'm connect in my head. I ain't got to cut down and paste it. Okay, no, I know this. All right, the anarchy. Let's read about the anarchic conditions which resulted in the Clarendon Constitution, which is where the Establishment Clause is based upon before you broke away from the church. Because before you broke away from the church, the reason why you broke away from the church is because of this anarchy that you don't want to talk about, but we're going to talk about it today. And we're going to go back before the anarchy. All right? Let's talk about it. Before this class, Countess Walker, you're going to be the baddest countess out there today. All right? Let's get there. Anarchy. Let's read it.
The anarchy was a civil war in England and Normandy between 1138 and 1153, which resulted in a widespread breakdown in law and order. The conflict was a war of secession precipitated by the accidental death of William Adelin, the only legitimate son of King Henry I, who had drowned in the White Ship disaster of 1120. Henry
Stop.
sought to be
Stop. See, this is the beautiful about this about being here at the Third English Church of England, not just being a member, but being an officer, and we know Countess Walker's a clerk. But what the beautiful about it is being able to participate in it, not just read, but to be able to participate and know what you're talking about. Because I can just stop and be like, "Who is King Henry the Countess?"
King Henry I was the son of William the Conqueror.
See how important that is. See how important that is. She not only reading, but she know what she's talking about. Versus somebody else is paragraphing something and don't know a damn thing about the family. This is her family, so she has to know it. She knew this from prior lessons. Okay, that's her ticket home. It ain't not me going to pay the way for her. It's her going to pay the way because they're going to decide if she comes, if she's going to be part of the family. It's not me. I'm just warning you what they going to say. You know what I'm saying? I'm warning you that you don't want to be judged by your family members, your ancestors, because they're already preserved. Let's continue to read. Go ahead. Read. This is crazy.
Henry sought to be succeeded by his daughter, known as Empress Matilda, but was only partially successful in convincing the nobility to support her. On Henry's death in 1135, his nephew, Stephen of Blois, seized the throne with the help of Stephen's brother, Henry of Blois, who was the Bishop of Winchester. Stephen's early reign saw fierce fighting with disloyal English barons, rebellious Welsh leaders, and Scottish invaders. Following a major rebellion in the southeast of England, Matilda invaded in 1139 with the help of her half brother, Robert of Gloucester.
That's fine. So we see an anarchy was resulting in a breakdown as a result of Henry I's son, William Allen, dying in the White Ship. We know Henry I was the son of William the Conqueror, and William the Conqueror was the first English Vicar. Prior to that, the only people in England was Berbers. All right? They were Berbers. So all the Anglo-Saxons that we're going to talk about today were actually Berbers, because we know William the Conqueror was the first English Vicar, which means that he was of English, he was a Frankish Nordic Viking. All right, we have to remember that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we are or we incorporated as English Anglo-Saxon Berbers because they all William the Conqueror also told our story. So we can't we have to listen to what he said and don't take it all to be true because we know that he conquered England, but he also followed the laws that were there prior to him conquering. So we see that the anarchy was a breakdown in the government of those who were ruling at that time, and this happened to be Henry II, and Henry II was the son of Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew, son of Four, ruler of Jerusalem. All right, so in order for us to understand the anarchy, and they said it was a breakdown and civil and law and government. So let's go to the government that was functioning at that particular time. That makes sense, right, Countess? Right?
Yes.
It makes sense to
Yes.
go to check the government out that resulted in the anarchy. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go check out the government because it involves Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, and it involves Henry II's son, John, the one who signed the Magna Carta. Magna Carta. So that means that there's a government that's combined with Norman and Anglo-Norman alliances. All right. That's beautiful to be able to break that down. So let's check out the alliance within the government structure. All right. Within the government structure. And we're going to go all the way back in time. Because we just went from the 17th century with the Establishment Clause, based upon the president, which is declared in Constitution, which jumped right back to the 12th century. And that's based upon a breakdown in the government. A civil war as a result in the government. So let's see what type of government that they have. Government in Norman and the Angevin England. All right? Because the Plantagenet kings gave birth to the Angevin crown. So let's read a little bit about them.
From the conquest of 1066 to the death of King John in 1216, England was governed by the Norman and Angevin dynasties. The Norman kings preserved and built upon the institutions of the Anglo-Saxon government.
Read
They
that
also
again.
The Norman kings preserved and built upon the institutions of Anglo-Saxon government. They also introduced new institutions, in particular feudalism, for later developments in English government. See government in late medieval England.
That's cool. So we see that the Plantagenet descendants, the Angevin crown, and the Norman descendants who invaded England built their government upon the backs of the who? The Anglo-Saxon government. So we see that the Anglo-Saxon government and the Angevin government, as well as the Norman government, was the same government. They just had what? De facto rulers. All right? Same government. It was never a problem with the government. All right? Or how the government was running. We're going to find out what was the problem. Let's read a little bit more about the Angevin and Norman government so we can get a set for how the dysfunction that took place in the household of our ancestors, which we're going to fix today. All right? Let's go into the historical context.
William the Conqueror from 1066 to 1087 inherited a sophisticated Anglo-Saxon government. He gradually replaced the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy with Anglo-Normans and introduced feudalism to England. Nevertheless, government institutions remained essentially unchanged. The conqueror's sons, William II and Henry I, succeeded him. Henry died without a legitimate male heir. Henry designated his daughter, Empress Matilda, as his successor, but his nephew, Stephen, claimed the throne. The resulting civil war, known as the Anarchy, weakened royal authority and ended in a negotiated settlement whereby Matilda's son succeeded Stephen as Henry II. Henry was the first Angevin king of England, followed by his sons Richard I and John. The Angevin kings ruled over extensive possessions in English Isles and France, known as the Angevin Empire.
Okay, so we can see their influence over there and on the Iberian Peninsula as well as here in North America. All right, because the Establishment Clause was based upon the presence of the Clarendon Constitution, but had to deal with the breakdown of the civil government of the Angevin Empire, who inhabited from the Norman government, which, as he said, went unchanged. Then it said the government was unchanged. Even with the facto rulers, the government was unchanged. All right, let's go a little bit more.
As a result,
hold on. No, I'm gonna go a little bit more further. Start right here, the crown.
Becoming king. In this period, a king had greater latitude to determine his own successor. Primogeniture, the rule that the eldest son inherited, but not yet definitive. William the Conqueror became king by right of conquest, and he could dispose of England as he saw fit. For this reason, his eldest son, Robert Curthose, inherited the Duchy of Normandy as were customary, while his second oldest son, William Rufus, was given England.
Okay, so we see that in regards to the crown, it was based upon primogeniture, but we know that the Angevin kingdom and the Norman kingdom got their or started their government off the back of the Anglo-Saxon government, right? And we know that that government remained unchanged until the time of what? The anarchy. To the time of the anarchy. That's very important. So we know that there was an amalgamation of, yeah, you're right, de facto states. We know there was an amalgamation of the two families, or the three families, I should say. The Anglo-Saxons, which were the kings of Wessex, the William the Conqueror, which were the Normans, as well as the Plantagenet and Angevin kingdoms. So there were four families. Well, actually, no, there were four dynasties amalgamated together on one governmental system. We had the Wessex government, i.e., the Anglo-Saxon government, the Norman government, which adopted the Anglo-Saxon government, the Plantagenet government as a result of the marriage of Empress Matilda to Henry the First white son William Adden, who died in the what we call the White Ship. So another marriage had to be arranged, and that's Matilda, who married Folk the Fifth, the father of Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Y'all might not know who I'm talking about, but this is all family. I know it like the back of my hand. You know what I'm saying? I talked about him in the class. I ain't got time to go point him out now, but I'm pretty sure if you go watch the lessons, it would all register. So we're dealing with the uh, Norman and Angevin government at this time, which was a breakdown in civil war as a result of the White Ship. And we know that they said that the government of the Anglo-Saxons, I mean the Angevin and the Norman, was the same as the Anglo-Saxon. Didn't they say that? So let's
Yes.
go check out the Anglo-Saxon government because we know that there was a breakdown in the government. We don't care who ruled in the government. We just want to know how the government got broken down. And we can't start with the Angevin. We can't start with the Norman. We got to go back before them. That makes sense, right? We got to
Yes.
go with the root of the Tudor. That's Alfred the Great. So let's do that. Let's go back to the Anglo-Saxon government. Government of the Anglo-Saxon. I ain't leaving one stone unturned. The government of the
Government
Anglo-Saxon. Go ahead.
Government in Anglo-Saxon England covers English government during the Anglo-Saxon period from the 5th century until the Norman conquest in 1066. See government in medieval England for developments after 1066. Until the 9th century, England was divided into multiple Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Each kingdom had its own laws and customs, but all shared a common basis in the Germanic legal tradition. In the 9th century, the kingdom of Wessex absorbed the other kingdoms, creating the unified kingdom of England. The king's primary responsibilities were to defend his people, disperse justice, and maintain order. Kings had extensive powers to make laws, mint coins, levy taxes, raise armies, regulate trade, and conduct diplomacy. The Witan or Royal Council advised the king, and the royal household provided the administrative machinery of government.
Okay, so we see that the government of North America should be Britain. It was now it's called the King's Bench. When the Normans had it, it was called the Career Regis. When our ancestors had it, it was called Witten, which was the same government unchanged. And we know that was started by who? Alfred the Great. The only problem with it is that the 1911 encyclopedia it says that the Anglo-Saxons or the English ain't the one who's functioning under the government of England. It's the Berbers. It's the Berbers who function under the government of what we call Witten or Wittenman. And I find that hard to believe because we know that how could the government of Witten be considered the Anglo-Saxon, but the monarchs of Scotland said that the Witten government was ran by Berbers, which means that they must be one and the same. They must be one and the same. And we just so happen to incorporate as Anglo Saxon Berbers. And no one on this planet has ever done that. No one has ever done that, incorporate as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. And the first one to call the Anglo-Saxon Berbers was the Scottish monarchs and kings in their 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica that was created in Edinburgh, Scotland. And Edinburgh, Scotland. Now, if that ain't prophecy, I don't know what is. All right. So we know that the government of North America should be written, but it broke down, which resulted in an establishment clause, which allows the freedom of religion, which should not be the case, because we know that prior to that, there was no freedom of religion because every religion, according to our ancestors, was one and the same. And that's the reason why the government was broken down in the first place. And that's why we get into the nitty gritty of the cause of it. And that's based upon understanding the religious government that we have. Okay? Because when we incorporated under 46 calling what is it? The Georgia Divine Statute 46:7-9. It says that the doctrine of the government. Okay, we incorporated based upon the doctrine of our government because the government is our doctrine, which we're going over today, and that's the doctrine or the laws of Witten. Very, 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 very important. So let's go back to the 1911 encyclopedia just to qualify that we are, in fact, Berbers, but our government is called Witten from this present to time immemorial. This is what they said. They said the Berbers were Libyans. We all know that. Libyan. It is say one thing about an Anglo-Saxon in this 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica definition. Not one thing about an Anglo-Saxon, but they said that their government of the Anglo-Saxon was what? That's it. Right here. Wittemont, Canum, an unwritten code called the Magna Carta was the body of politics or the social politics of the Berbers. How did that get there? You know how that got there, Countess Middleton? I mean, Countess Walker? Who put that there? How could the Anglo-Saxon government called Wittenmont or Witten be the same government of the Berbers and it be in existence to this present day, but ain't no Berbers there? We didn't have Berbers till we incorporated. And now the 1911 encyclopedia is validating that the government does actually belong to us. It actually belongs to us. You don't believe us? Let's go even further. Let's go even further. Now, since we qualify that they're all Berbers, let's really go into the family tree. Okay? Let's start with our Jesus Christ because everybody else can't be trusted. All right? They can't be trusted. We need to go right to the source. Not some spook that everybody talking about, but the one who reverenced was the actual Vicar Christ, who represented Christ. Why? Because when we go to AI, and we look up Vicar Christ. Look what AI say about the Vicar Christ. Look what they say. Where is it? This is what AI say. Now this is AI. AI made the connection. Why can't we make the connection, but AI was able to do it? Read what it say, Countess.
Vicar of Christ refers to the Pope in the Catholic Church, and in the context of King Edgar the Peaceful, it signifies that he was seen as a powerful advocate for the church during his reign, actively supporting religious reforms and acting almost like a representative of Christ on earth in England by promoting monoasticism and strengthening
Monotheism. That's probably hard.
mono okay, and strengthening the church's influence within his kingdom. Essentially, he was considered a strong leader in the religious sphere, aligning himself with the church's agenda.
Okay. So it clearly says here that he acted as the vicar of Christ or the representation of Christ. And we know the word Christ means anointed. Now you only got two picks. You either got the Pope, right? Or King Edgar. That's the only two you got. All right? We're gonna prove it. Now AI qualify it. Let's prove it. Cause why? We're gonna go into King Edgar's life and he gonna tell you that the Pope is not the right one. Because those are the one he was trying to remove from the church. The canons. He was removing them through the English Benedictine reform. All right? This is why we never had a problem with government, because the government never changed from the time of the kings of Wessex all the way up to now. It was just the church had changed. And King Edgar fixed it and it was broke again once he died. That's the reason why I had to incarnate in this present day to restore it again. How? Let's go to King Edgar's life and read the whole story. Let's read the whole story. Never been done before. King Edgar, King of England, our Jesus Christ, which I'm the reincarnation of, which is actually this guy right here. Not that picture, but this one. He's in All Souls College and All Souls College in Oxford. Where did they get this picture from? Where did they get it? All right, let's read.
King of Edgar, from 944 to July 8th, 975, was king of the English from 959 until his death in 975. He became king of all England on his brother's death. He was the younger son of King Edmund I and his wife F. F. P.
Of Gifu.
Fu
Of Gifu.
El-Gifu. A detailed account of Edgar's reign is not possible because only a few events was recorded by the chroniclers, and the monastic writers were more interested in recording the activities of the leaders of the church. Edgar mainly.
Stop. Now we read right over this. Did you hear what they just said? They said, hell, we ain't gonna write about King Edgar. We just gonna write about the chroniclers and the leaders of the church. All the leaders but the one leader they should be talking about, they chose to write about. Right? They said it right there. I didn't write this, they said it. They said there was no account of Edgar's reign because the chronicler chose to write about something else. All right? Who was the chroniclers? Those were the ones who was running the monasteries who were illegal at that particular time. This is what we're going to read about. No wonder nobody talked about King Edgar the Peaceful. All right, let's see it.
Edgar mainly followed the political policies of his predecessors, but there was a major changes in the religious spheres.
Stop.
The English.
Stop. So we see that the government was running uniform. He said he went along with the political policies of his predecessors. And after him, the political policies were still in place. It's just that the religious spirit had changed. You hear that? That religious scope of things had changed. And that came through what we call the Independent Town Reform. Let's read about it.
Okay. The English Benedictine reform, which he strongly supported, became a dominant religious and social force. It is seen by historians as a major achievement, and it was accomplished by a literary and artistic flowering, mainly associated with Ethelwood, Bishop of Winchester. Monasteries aggressively acquired estates from lay land owners with Edgar's assistance, leading to disorder when he died, and former owners sought to recover their lost property, sometimes by force.
Stop. So it says that estates from lay land owners with Edgar's assistance. So the church acquired, monasteries aggressively acquired estates from lay land owners with Edgar's assistance, but when he died, they took it back. They took it back. And we're going to see why they took it back. With the assistance of Edgar's brother, Edward. All right, we're going to read about it. Let's read it. Continue to read.
Edgar's major administrative reform was the introduction of a standardized coinage in the early 970s to replace the previous decentralized system. He also issued legislative codes which mainly concentrated on improving procedures for enforcement of law.
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there. So we see that King Edgar was active in government. All right, he was active in the political government of his predecessors, as well as set the tone for the successors. All right, within government. But he took a special interest in the ancient Benedictine monastery, which is based upon the monasteries who control all the land. And he gave them to the landowners. These were the tenants that received the charters from the king. All right, very, very important we understand that as family. All right, let's read a little bit more. Continue.
England had suffered from Viking invasions for over a century when Edgar came to power, but there was none during his reign which fell in a lieu in attacks between the mid 1950s and the in the early 980s. After his death, the throne was disputed between the supporters of his two surviving sons. The elder one, Edward the Martyr, was chosen with the support of Dunstan, the Archbishop of Canterbury. 3 years later, Edward was murdered and succeeded by his younger brother, Ethelred the Unready. Later chroniclers presented Edgar's reign as a golden age when England was free from external attacks and internal disorder, especially compared with Ethelred's disastrous rule. Modern historians see Edgar's reign as the pinnacle of Anglo-Saxon culture, but they disagree with his political legacy, and some see the disorders following his death as a natural reaction to his overbearing control.
King Edgar didn't play. He didn't play when it come to the law. Everybody else was all loose. He didn't play. You know what I'm saying? We see that Edward the Martyr and Ethelred the Unready, who was the descendants, who were the successors of King Edgar the Peaceful. All right, Edward the Martyr and Ethelred the Unready was King Edgar the Peaceful's sons. All right, they were his sons. They were disasters. What he set up, they messed up. All right, and this was told by chroniclers. All right, let's read a little bit more. Do you want to say a couple of words about what you read so far, Countess? Or you want to continue to read?
I can continue to read.
Okay, all right. We're gonna move. These are a couple of sources: Anne William and Barbara York. There are some of them who talks about the difference between Edgar's ring and Edward's ring, which were brothers. At the time of their upbringing, they were too young, so Edred became king. He was the son of Edward the Elder. Alfred the Great had a son, Edward the Elder, and he had three sons. Edward the Elder had three sons: Asherton, Edmund, and Edred. Okay, Edmund Asherton didn't have any children, so Edmund had two children, Edward and Edwig, but they were young. So Edward took over, and when he died, Edwig, the oldest of Edgar, took over, and he didn't do what he was supposed to do in regards to um, him ill managing the church property, which we're going to talk about in a second. All right, it's clear so far.
Yes.
Okay. Background.
In the 9th century, Anglo-Saxon England came under increasing attacks from Viking raids, accumulating an invasion from the Viking Great Heathen Army in 865. By 878, the Vikings had overrun the kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia, and nearly conquered Wessex. But in that year, the West Saxons achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Edington under King Alfred the Great. By 883, Ethelred, Lord of the Mercians, had accepted Alfred's overlordship. In the 880s and the 890s, the Anglo-Saxons ruled Wessex and Western Mercia, but the rest of England remained under Viking rule. Alfred
Okay.
died
Stop
in
right there. Stop right there. Okay. So it's very important to understand that before King Edgar the Peaceful came to rule, they were being invaded by Vikings. All right. They were being invaded by Vikings. Alfred the Great was defending against the Vikings, and then his son took the battle in doing so. Okay, so the whole point of it was an invasion of Vikings, and this invasion of Vikings was based upon the Great Heathen Army. They was dealing with Vikings way before that, going back to Clovis the First, and these were the Frankish who were around when the Anglo-Saxons were converted to Christianity at the time of Ethelbert of Kent, which we'll talk about in a second. But we're in the 9th century, and we're still going through Viking attacks. Okay, we're still going through Viking attack, but still holding on to, excuse my French, our shit. We're still handling our stuff. Okay, so it's very important to understand how thorough we was as a family, a unit, a force. All right, we still got that force. We're just a house divided amongst ourselves. right? Because we don't know who the Vicar Christ is or who is the reputation of the anointed one. Because it ain't who we say it ain't who we think it is, and it ain't who they say it is. All right? Let's continue to read.
Okay. Where do you want me
Right.
to start where we left off first?
Start right here.
Okay, Edward
Oh,
Edward
parts up,
died
parts up, parts up. Hold on. You start off right here. Yeah, start right here. You
in
left off here.
Okay, by 878, the Vikings had overrun the kingdoms of Mercia, East Anglia, of Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia, and nearly conquered Wessex. But in that year, the West Saxons achieved a divisive victory at the Battle of Edington under Alfred the Great. In 883, Ethelred, Lord of the Mercians, had accepted Alfred's overlordship, and in 880 and 890, the Anglo-Saxons ruled Wessex and West Mercia, but the rest of England remained under Viking rule. Alfred died in 899, and in 810, his son, King Edward the Elder, the daughter of Ethelfed,
Ethelflaed.
lady of, lady of the Mercians, who was Ethelred's widow, conquered Viking ruled eastern Mercia and East Anglia. Ethelfed died in 918, and the Mercians installed her daughter, Elfwin, as the second lady of the Mercians, but Edward seized her and established full control over Mercia.
Okay, so
Edward,
stop right there. So we see that all the kingdoms of Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex were combined. All right, at this particular time, but Vikings were still controlling Northumbria, Essex, and some other uh, 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 parts of England. They were still suffering from Viking raids, but England, I mean Wessex, East Anglia, and Mercia was combined. Okay, let's move forward.
okay, Edward died in 924 and was succeeded by his eldest son, Ethelstan, who may have been killed.
King.
uh, yeah, it's okay, who have been king only of Mercia at first, but ruled the whole of his father's realm by the next year. In 927, he conquered Northumbria and thus became the first king of all England. He died in October 939 and was succeeded by his half brother and Edgar's father, Edmund, who almost immediately lost control of the north to the Vikings, but recovered full control of England by 944. In May 946, he was stabbed to death trying to protect his Senesco, but from attack by a convicted outlaw. And as his sons Ed, Edwig and Edgar were infants, their uncle Edred became king. Like Edmund, Edred inherited the kingship of the whole England and soon lost it when York, southern Northumbria, accepted a Viking king, but he recovered it when the York's magnates expelled Eric Bloodaxe in 954.
That's cool. Stop right there. So as we can see, Alfred the Great dies and Edward the Elder comes to rule. Once Edward, then they unite Wessex, East Anglia, and Mercia. And we know that Edmund and Lady Mercia were the sons of Edward the Elder. And once Ashton dies, because Ashton died childless, Edmund the first came to reign. When Edmund the first comes to reign, he has two children, which was Edgar and Edward, but they're too young. So Edred takes over and becomes king. He's another son of Alfred the Great's son, Edward the Elder. Because Edward the Elder had three sons, Atherton, Edmund, and Edred. Okay, so as a result of Edred and Edgar being infants, Edred had to step in to become king. All right. Once he dies, all the while he's king, all the counselors that were under Edmund which is what they call eldermen. Eldermen, or this is where the title Ethelyn comes from, or noblemen, because you had to be of the king's chamber or the king's household or be related to the king. All right. So all these were family, and all those who will be king will be raised by some family member. All right. So as we can see, we went from Alfred the Great to Albert the Elder, from Albert the Elder to Edmund. I mean to Atherton. From Atherton, he didn't have any children, so Edmund came to rule. Edmund had two children, Edwig and Edgar. Well, they were two infants at that particular time. So Edred had to step in. Once he died, he passed it on to Edwig, which we're going to read coming up. All right, that's clear so far.
Yes.
Okay, continue to read. Hold on, let me find out. Hold on. Let me go to I want to get to. Okay, right here. We're gonna skip and move forward. We're gonna move to okay, now we're gonna move to uh Edward's ring. Because when once Edred dies, Edward is gonna come to rule in 955. And he's gonna rule to 955 to 957. And in 957, the kingdom gets split up. The kingdoms are going to be split up as a result of the mismanagement of the monasteries or the churches. The government is fine, all right? The government is fine, making money, they're doing everything. It's just the religious part is messing up, all right? Because the church and the monasteries own the property, and the monastery's wealth depends upon the patronage of the subjects or the citizens or the tenants or the laymen, okay? Because as I said, when you go to when you go to church, you go to church to get praise. And the reason why they went to church or the monasteries or the abbeys or the cathedral to get praise because when they wasn't at church, they was out there in their kingdom, living good. All right? You know, if you ain't living good and you're out there robbing and what they say in Martin, out there thundering and plundering. Out there thundering and plundering. But if you have a good king, you're living good, good laws, good economy, etc. And what better place to go to church? You know, to be thankful for that. Because you know when you get out of church, you're going right back to that goodness instead of going to church, praying for some goodness, you ain't got it yet, and ain't never gonna get it because as soon as you leave church, you're back out there in the same condition. Okay? King Edgar dealt with that. No other member of church, no other leader, no other vicar of Christ, no other representation of the anointed is doing such a thing. But King Edgar the Peaceful. And what he did, we're actually doing ourselves by way of incorporating what he did by the Reformation to reform, make like before. Okay, you want to say a couple of words, or you want to continue to read?
I'll continue.
Okay, continue.
Okay, Edward became king on Edred's death on 23rd November 955. Historians have often been critical of Edwig's portraying him as irresponsible or incompetent. As one piece of evidence cited for this view is the exceptional number of charters he issued in 956. His 60 odd gifts of land in that year make up around 5% of all genuine Anglo-Saxon charters. No other ruler in Europe is known to have matched that yearly total before the 12th century. The historian Anne Williams observes that the many charters may indicate that Edwig had to buy support, but too little is known about the background to be certain.
Okay, so this is from Edgar's life, but this is very problematic for me. So let's hear from Edgar's side because it said that the only way you got land was by charters, and Edgar gave out charters. The problem is who he gave the charters to, right? Who did he give his charters to? Because he said he gave out a whole bunch of them, and we know that the monasteries when Edgar had it had mad property. It wasn't until Edgar died that the property was taken back. All right. So we know that Edward comes to ring in 955 when Edred, his uncle, dies. And as a result of that, he inhabited southern Mercia and southern England and Edgar inhabited North England. All right, but in 957, the kingdom split up. But he comes to rule in 955. So let's read a little bit more and go get a little more insight about what it is that Edward is doing that's contradictory or is in violation of what King Edgar wanted for the kingdom that was so needed at the time. Okay, let's look at Edward. We're gonna go right to the root of where he's ruling at. 955, early reign of Edward. All right, we're gonna go 955 because everything else pretty much says the same. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Edwig's predecessor, Edred, suffered from ill health, which became much worse in his last years, and he relied on key advisors, including his mother, Edgifu, Archbishop Oda, Abbot Dunstan of Glastonbury, Elfsige, which he appointed Bishop of Winchester, and Ethelstan, ealdorman of East Anglia, who was so powerful that he was known as the Half King. Most surviving charters of the last 2 years of Edred's reign was produced at Glastonbury Abbey, and almost all of these were not attested by the king, suggesting that Dunstan was authorized to issue charters in Edred's name when he was too ill to carry out his duties. When Edwig succeeded, the court was ruled by powerful factions. He appeared to have been determined to show his independence from previous regimes from the start. The historian Ben Snook commented that Edwig, unlike his brother Edgar, was clearly his own man. Immediately on coming to power, he acted to put a stop to all of this. However, in the view of Keynes, whether Edwig and Edgar were able to assert their own independence of action or remained at the mercy of established interests at court is unclear.
Well, see, now you see the difference between Edgar and Edward, right? You see a difference about the attitude, their disposition, but we need a little bit more about Edward because as we read about when in Edgar, it said that these charters that he were giving out, it wasn't a problem about the charters being given out, but who was he giving the charters to? Because when the charters were given out by Edgar, it was given to the monastery, okay, for the English Benedictine time reform, okay? That's the problem. This is the conclusion that we must come to based upon the premises that we're reading, which is from the original thought, original position can only be concluded by a thought experiment to think upon what it is that we're reading to come to these premises to draw our conclusion. So there's a little bit more to draw our premises. Let's go a little further down. Right here.
Historians have often cited critical of Edward, portraying him as irresponsible or incompetent. And the key evidence cited for this view is the exceptional number of charters he issued in 956. His 60-odd gifts of land in that year make up around 5% of all the genuine Anglo-Saxon charters, and no other ruler in Europe is known to have matched that yearly total before the 12th century. They were mainly in favor of laymen, and it is possible that some church land was being alienated, but only a few estates were known to have formerly been in religious ownership. Historians sometimes assume that he was giving away royal property in order to buy support, but again, there is little evidence for this. He may have been selling privileges, allowing landholders to convert folk land, which they already owned as hereditary family estates, which owed food, rent, and services to the crown, into bookland, which was exempt from most obligations, thus making money from reducing the income of the crown in the long term.
Stop.
However, many.
Stop. Now you see what he was doing? Do you see what Edward was doing? He was taking the money from the crown and giving it to somebody else. Because the crown was like the treasury. You know what I'm saying? If the crown, if wasn't no heirs, the crown hold on to some heirs came to the right age. All right? That's called inquisition post mortem. All right, that's how Laurius sees them was conveyed. All right. So let's get a little bit more on. Let's go back to King Edgar now. So we see in 955 to 957, Edward came to reign as the result of his uncle dying, which was Edred, the son of Edward the Elder, the son of Alfred the Great, the King of England. We understand at this particular time when he comes to rule, he's ruling southern England, and King Edward's ruling um, northern England. And when Edward dies in 959, this is when Edgar comes and combines both kingdoms and make it so powerful under the English Reformation that no one else can resist it, which we're going to read now. Okay, so let's go on down to 959 right here. King of Mercia 959.
In 957, the King of England was divided between Edwig, who kept Wessex, and Edgar, who became King of Mercia, with the river Thames forming the boundary. It is uncertain whether this was the result of a coup against Edwig or a decision to divide the kingdom between the brothers.
Stop.
The historic.
Stop. So we don't have to read nothing more. We see in 955, Edward comes to ring, and we know when he comes to ring, he started giving out mad charters, and the charges given was land belonging to the church and the members of the church. All right, and we see as a result of that, the kingdoms got split up. He ruled Wessex, which was southern, and Edgar ruled North Mercia, which was northern. And we know that Edward continued to do what he was doing until he died in 959, which King Edgar comes to rule and fixes everything. All right. So let's move down a little bit in the timeline to bring the story to its conclusion. All right. All right. We don't want to read about his administration. Administration was fine. We don't want to read about the coinage. The money was fine. We don't want to read about the charters, right? The charters we know about, King Edgar gave out charters, and the charters that he did reform was the charters given by his brother Edward, as well as all the other charters that were unlawfully given. So we don't really care pretty much about the function of the government, because we know that the government pretty much remained unchanged from the time of Alfred the Great all the way up to the Plantagenet kings, as we read, based upon the function of the government, which we know was always called either Witten, Curia Regis, or the King's Council, which we call the King's Bench. All right, so we move a little bit further down in time. Charters, coinage, laws. We ain't got to read about that. You can do that on your own time. Coinage. All right, religion. This is where we want to get to. Start right here.
As King of Mercia in 958, Edgar granted land to St. Werburgh's Minster, Chester. This was an unreformed community, a house of secular clergy, and would have been an unlikely beneficiary of royal patronage later in Edgar's reign. The Benedictine reformers later represented this ascension as a victory for their cause, but this donation showed that monastic status was not then crucial for him and his advisors.
Not right there. Let me find out where we need to go. All right, let's see. Okay, here we go. Right here.
In the early years of Edgar's reign, the third monastic leader, Ethelwood, was the only abbot who attested charters showing his special status. He was a strong critic of secular clergy, sometimes called canons, who was able to marry, unlike monks. Following his appointment as Bishop of Winchester in 963, Ethelwood converted the city's new minster into an institution exclusively of monks. Edgar successfully sought papal authority for the forcible expulsion of the canons and sent an armed force under a royal official to help in carrying it out. In 966, he granted privileges to the new community in a magnificent charter, see image, which referred to the cleansing of the church by the driving out of the canons, and recorded the grant of the new minister to Christ by Edgar, who is described as Viscarius Christi, Vicar of Christ. One of the main justifications for the king's involvement was that the canons' sinful nature meant that their prayers for him were worthless.
You hear that? Did you hear that? So they refer to King Edgar as the Vicar of Christ. This is why he changed the monasteries and removed the secular clergy and put monks there who were celibate. That was the whole purpose and intent for the Reformation. Why is this? Why is this so? Let's go back to Edwig. Why? Let's go back to Edwig to see why. We're gonna go right down to religion. Right here. Now we read King Edgar's or the Vicar of Christ, which was King Edgar the Peaceful point of view. Let's read his brother Edwig in regards to his idea about the Benedictine reform or religion. Let's read it.
During Edgar's reign, the Benedictine reform movement, with monasteries following strict rules of celibacy and prohibition of personal property, became dominant in religion and politics. Kings before Edgar were sympathetic to its ideals, but they did not take the view of Bishop Ethelwood and his circle that it was only worthwhile religious life, and that the secular clergy, clerks who owned property, and many of whom were married, were corrupt and immoral. Like Edmund and Edred, Edwig donated both to the communities of Benedictine monks and the secular community clergy, but he was later portrayed as an enemy of the movement who despoiled the monasteries and favored the secular clergy. According to the Benedictine chronicler William of Malmesbury, writing in the 12th century, for soon from the support of this pitiful totalities, Edward plunged all men of the monastic order all over England into undeserved calamities, first stripping them of the support of their revenues and then driving them into exile. Dunstan himself, as head of all the monks, were sent packing into Flanders. That was a time when all monasteries wore an unkempt and pitiful air. Even with the convent of the Malmesburys, where monks had dwelt for over 270 years, he made into a bawdy house for clerks. But you, O Lord Jesus, our creator and creator, a skilled artificer, well able to reform our deformities, use these unruly and wandering persons to bring to light and public knowledge your treasure that for so many years laid hidden. I mean the body of Saint Aldhind, which they themselves raised from the ground and established in a shrine. The prestige for these clerks were further enhanced by royal generosity, which gave the saint an estate admirably adapted both by its size and by its convenient position. All the same, even at this distance, it is horrible to remember how cruelly the king behaved to the other monasteries, being himself young and foolish, and moved too by the advice of his mistress, who constantly laid siege to his childish mind.
Okay, so as we can see here, based upon Edwig's in regards to the Benedictine reform, it clearly shows you that what Edwig did, King Edgar had to go fix. And they referred to him as Jesus Christ, our creator. You was able to fix what Edwig did wrong. That's why he called himself the Vicar of Christ, or the reputation of Christ, or the reputation of the anointed one, the one who had the anointed understanding of how to correct the church. It's very, very important to understand that, because that was the whole purpose intent for the English Benedictine reform. Let's go there real quick. All right, let's go right there. Go right to it. English Benedictine reform. Let's see what Edgar meant by the reform. Let's just find it. Okay, here we go. All right. This is the English Benedictine reform, and this is the purpose and intent for the English Benedictine reform, and this is the reason why he reformed it, because of what the clergy were doing in the church. They were selling property that was accumulated for the intent of the church. We call them glebe, but now it changed from that, and they were just selling it for, as they said, for brownie points, or for self prosperity, and it wasn't for the intent of the church and for the intent of God, how it should have been. And that's why King Edgar represented the Vicar of Christ. He called himself the Vicar of Christ. They even, historical chroniclers as well as abbots for the monastery, refer to him as Christ. Read this part right here. Edgar.
Edgar was concerned about divergent interpretations of the Benedictine rule in different monasteries in his kingdom and wanted to impose uniform rules to be followed by all. The rules were set out in the key document of the English Reform, the Regularis Concordia, which was adopted by the Council of Winchester in around 970. The Concordia was written by Ethelwood, who would have sought advice from the Gent and the Furry Abbeys. A major aim of the Concordia was the regulation of the form of church services, and Ethelwood tried to synthesize which he regarded as the best continent in English practice.
Stop right there. Now, it's very important to understand this, because Ethelwood was the son of Asselton the Half King. Asselton the Half King was one of the counselors of Edmund I, the father of Edgar and Edwig. When Edmund died, the counselors from the abbey went to Edred, their uncle, and once he died, they counseled Edwig and Edgar. Now, Edgar and Edwig were by a half king called Asselton, and the half king was the son of Athelwood. I mean, parts of Athelwood we talk about now is the son of that half king Asselton. All right, and Athelwood was the one who actually taught King Edgar the ways of the monastery, where when King Edgar was being raised as a child, he was taught by or raised by Athelton the Half King. But when it came to the ways of the monastery, he was taught by Athelwood. Continue to read.
On the continent, there were different interpretations of the Benedictine rule. But in England, uniform practice was a matter of political principle. The Concordia said that King Edgar urged all to be of one mind as regards monastic usage. And so, with their minds anchored firmly on the ordinances of the rule to avoid all dissension, less differing ways of observing the rules, less different ways of observing the customs of one rule and one country should bring their holy conversation into disrepute.
Not right there. So he wasn't just concerned about it in England. He said the continent as well as the world. It was a cosmopolitan movement as well as an intellectual movement that was all over the continents. All right. And he said all of them will follow the rule as he put it. All right, because there was different interpretation of how the Benedictine rule. You can find Benedictine monasteries right now, and you find secular clergy in there. King Edgar stopped that. He said, if you're going to be a monk, you're going to be a celibate monk in my monastery, and it's going to go for any monastery that follows the Benedictine rule. That's why he said on the continental, there were different interpretations of the Benedictine rule. But in England, uniform practice was a matter of political principle. It wasn't based off a belief. It was a political. I mean, that was a government. You had to follow that. The Concordia said that Edgar urged all to be of one mind as regarded to monistic usage, and so with their mind anchored firmly on the ordinance of the rule to avoid all dissension, less different ways of observing the custom of one rule, and one country shall bring their holy conversation into disrepute. So that means that if you over here, if you over there, if you back there, that that's why it says the masses. All right. If we got different members from all over the country under the same mindset, then we are of the same mass, the same consciousness. All right. We are on the same frequency. It's very important to understand that because King Edgar set the standard. This is why he called himself the Vicar of Christ. Why? Because in closing, let's establish or let's see what the purpose and intent of a Vicar in Christ. Let's just see. Vicar in Christ. Read the first paragraph.
Vicar of Christ is a term used in different ways and with different theological connotations throughout history. The original notion of a vicar is an earthly representative of Christ, but it is also used in the sense of person acting as a parish priest in place of a real person. The title is now used in Catholicism to refer to the bishops, and most specifically, was historically used to refer to the Bishop of Rome, the Pope.
Okay, so we can see the Vicar means representation, or Christ means anointed, and it means the earthly representation of the anointed. And it is also referred to the Vicar of Christ that's associated with the bishops of Rome, which they call popes. We know that the popes are those who function under what we call canon law, because we know the word canon is a title. You don't believe me? Let's just check it out before we move forward. Canon. Read that for him.
Canon is a Christian title used to refer to a member of a certain bodies and subject to an ecclesiastical rule.
Stop right there. All right. So if that's the case, let's go to canon law of the Catholic Church.
Canon law of the Catholic Church is how the church organizes and governs itself. It is the system of laws and ecclesiastical legal principles made and enforced by the hierarchical authorities of the Catholic Church to regulate its external organization and government and to order and direct the activities of the Catholics toward the mission of the church.
That's all you need. That's all you need. So now if that's the case, let's go to let's see. The Pope. Because Pope is head of the Catholic Church. This is the Pope. And the Pope, we trace the Pope back to the Council of Nicene in 325. Read what they say.
Okay, the Edict of Milan in 313 granted freedom to all religions in the Roman Empire, beginning in the peace of the church. In 325, the First Council of Nicaea condemned Ari, Ari, Arianism,
Arianism.
declaring Trinitarianism dogmatic, and in its sixth canon recognized the special role of the sees of Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch. Great defenders of the Trinitarian faith included the popes, especially Liberius, who was exiled to Berea by Constantinus II for his Trinitarian faith, Damascus the first, and several other bishops.
Let's go right there. Let's go right here. Go a little further. Right here.
Okay, in 380, the Edict of Thessalonica declared Nicene Christianity to be the state religion of the empire, with the name Catholic Christians reserved for those who accepted the faith. While the civil power in the Eastern Roman Empire controlled the church, and the patriarch of the Constantinople, the capital, wielded much power. In the Western Roman Empire, the bishops of Rome were able to consolidate the influence and the power they already possessed. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, barbarian tribes were converted to Arian Christianity or Nicene Christianity. Clovis I, king of the Franks, was the first important barbarian ruler to convert to the mainstream church rather than the Arianism, allying himself with the papacy. Other tribes, such as the Visigoths, later abandoned Arianism in favor of the established church.
So we see that the barbarians are descendants of Clovis I, who are the Frankish kings, and we see that these were the ones who are associated with the Pope, going all the way back to the Council of Nicene. And it said they all went from Christianity from barbarianism. They went from barbarianism to Christianity. Clovis I, and they all were the ones who were associated with who? Pope Gregory I to convert who? The Anglo-Saxons into what? Their type of Christianity. How we know it? Let's just see. Clovis I was the founder of the Franks, and we know the Franks are the Merovingians who never claimed to be the sons of God like the Anglo-Saxons. So in closing, let's look at Pope Gregory I. All right? This is a little bit be right here.
Okay, the realignment of the barbarian alliance to Rome from their Arian Christian alliances shaped medieval Europe. Gregory saw Franks, Lombards, and Visigoths aligned with Rome in religion. He also combated the dynastic heresy popular particularly in North Africa at the time.
Okay, so as we can see, that those who are of the Christianity that was created by Pope Gregory I, who had the Anglo-Saxons converted to their type of Christianity, it's Christianity that were created by Constantine, as well as the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, which they clearly said they were what? Barbarians. All right, not Berbers, but barbarians. So in closing, I think I got one more to show you. This is the reason why King Edgar warned us, and we know that those who chronicleize his laws and those who minister to him based upon his laws were those such as what we call Elphic of Incham, as Oswald, because he created what they call Regalius Concordia, as well as what we call Wolfston II. And I want to read his couple of two books from him in closing, and reason why, because he warned us. He warned us by us going away from the church why we were subject to the Viking invasions, which is the reason why we were following false gods or pagan gods, which was what the false myth comes from. Let's just read that in closing. Closing. right here. Let's read the fossil dis.
Okay, de faso dis, or in classic Latin spelling, de faso dis on gods, is an Old English homily composed by Elfrich of
Elflick
Ethnis.
of Insham. Yeah.
Okay, in the late 10th or early 11th century, the sermon is noted for its attempt to explain beliefs in traditional Anglo-Saxon and Norse gods within a Christian framework throughout Euhem
The humorization. That's a hard one.
Okay, the homily was subsequently adapted and circulated by Wulfstan, the second Archbishop of York, and was also translated into Old Norse under the title. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
German word.
Yeah. Well,
How
this book,
false
that's it. That's
belief
enough.
began.
This is good. This is actually explaining the origin of false gods. All right. This was created by Elphick of Insham, and Elphick of Insham was an abbot, all right, for the Benedictine monastery. Okay. Let's see it right here. Elphick of Insham before we go to the next one.
Afric was educated in the Benedictine Old Minster at Winchester under Saint Ethelwood, who was bishop there from 963 to 964. Ethelwood, who had carried on the tradition of Dunstan in his government of the Abbey of Abingdon, then in Berkshire and at Winchester, he continued his strenuous support for the English Benedictine reform. He seems to have actually taken part in the teaching activities of the Abbey.
Okay, so Elphick of Insham supported the English Benedictine reform that was started by Alfred the Great and came to its height with King Edgar the Peaceful. And the book by Woolston warned him on the myth or the story associated with false gods, false gods. And those false gods were the pagan gods, because according to his other book, he said the reason why God was upset with us based upon the disobedience, he caused those Norse gods to come and invade the English. Let's look at it in closing. Sermons, Lupus, and Engels. Let's read that.
The
Another book.
sermon, okay, oh, Sermon Lupus de ad Anglos, the Sermon of the Wolf of the English, is a title given to a homily composed in England between 1010 to 1016 by Wulfstan II, Archbishop of York, died 1032, who commonly
I'm
styled,
sorry. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
okay, who commonly styled himself Lupus or Wolf after the first element in his name. Throughout the title in Latin, the work itself is written in Old English. Sermon Lupus Lupi and Wulfstan's most well-known work. In it, he blames a lack of moral discipline amongst his fellow English as a source of God's anger against the English, which has taken the shape of 30 years of Viking raids against England. Wulfstan exhorts the English to behave in a manner more pleasing to God, and specifically to live according to the laws of the church and of the king.
That's good.
The sermon,
Okay, that's good. So as we can see in two books from Wolfston, the Sermon de Lupus Angelos, as well as the De Felix Dees, is is one telling us that the reason why God punished the English and caused Vikings to now invade the land is a result of their disobedience to the church and the king. And he told us also about the origin of false beliefs, which came from those Norse gods, and we know that those Norse gods are those Frankish gods that descended down from Pope Gregory I, who were those who go all the way back to Constantine, and we know that they are all associated with the teachings of what we call canon law. Okay, it's very important to understand the difference so you can be accounted amongst the righteous. So, in closing, Let me make sure I covered everything. This is the purpose of, yeah, right here. Us understanding our history because um, the ancient Byzantine reform was a result of cleaning out the monasteries. Okay, replacing the monasteries with celibate monks and relieving them of those secular clergy that were subject to those canons that were created by St. Augustine of Hippo, who was actually part of the church fathers going back to the 4th century and 325 AD. All right, so we see the dissolution of the monasteries created by Henry VIII, and one of those monasteries that were dissolved was the monastery of Glastonbury Abbey. Okay, and we know King Edgar the Peaceful and all the uh, saints that we descend out from were buried there as well. Okay, so with that, we're going to end in this lecture, and I'm going to let Countess Walker say a couple of words about the lesson, as well as say her piece, and then we're going to close out. And I just want to again thank her for having the courage to come up here and being an example, not just for the women, but for the brothers, because a lot of us are afraid away from being in the light. We like being in the darkness where the light can't shine. Okay. And we understand that what's done in the darkness will come to a light. So make your way to the light as Countess Walker has done. And by being obedient, she will be counted amongst the righteous. So with that, I digress and let her say her piece.
Well, thank you, my Lord, for inviting me to the platform today.
Not a problem.
I found it very, as all your teachings are, it's always consistent what we've always been learning. And there's no doubt that King Edgar the Peaceful is the vicar of Christ, but it has morphed into the popular, the Pope, because that's what's more popular now. But the history, hasn't been buried. It's just not known because, as you showed, that we have this veil of ignorance. But because of our engrams and our internal memory, we're finding our way back to our history and who we are as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. So it took somebody like yourself to interpret this, but with the internet, it wasn't buried or hidden. It just hadn't been interpreted for us. So now we can make our history very concrete. And, I find it almost like bread droppings, when you give us more interpretations, we can just pick it up. And in one of the lessons, I just was so encouraged because we have a Supreme Court case in Mississippi from 2020 where it cited King Edgar the Peaceful, where that's where they can't secular courts cannot judge bishops
I got
because
that. I
that was
got that. I got that case right here for you too. Yeah.
right. And
See,
that
you see how my students study. You see how my students study. I'm gonna just bring the case or to show y'all what she's talking about right here.
yeah, that's right here in Mississippi. So if we're not in the Anglosphere, why would a Supreme Court judge um cite King Edgar the Peaceful in 2020?
Mhm.
So
Right, right there. Want to read that real quick for them? This is it. Let me just go right here to the case. Uh, United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, but it's regard to territories in Mississippi. But it was a circuit court, Fifth Circuit Court. Yeah, Mississippi, right there. This is what you're talking about, right?
yes.
All right, and this is a petition be hearing en banc by a panel of judges. All right, a petition by a panel of judges, and look what they say. Page 19. right there.
In the Middle Ages, clergy were categorically exempt from the reach of civil courts. See Felix Makeover, the Constitutional History and Constitution of the Church of England, 384 to 94. During the reign of the Saxon kings, civil courts had no jurisdiction over clergy accused of even clearly secular crimes unless and until the bishop divested them of their spiritual authority. Leonard W. Levy, Origins of the Fifth Amendment. If a priest allow of illicit intercourse or neglect the baptism of a sick person or to be drunk to that degree that he cannot do it, let him abstain from his ministry until the doom of the bishop. Alfred C21. If a priest kills another man, let the bishop desecularize him and then let him be given up from the minister. If a priest commits a crime worthy of death, he shall be seized and kept until the bishop's judgment. And during the reign of King Edgar, the peaceful 959 to 975, the church required all disputes between clergymen to be addressed before bishops and not secular courts. See
There you go.
Makeover.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all we need. So there you have it. That's a 2020. That was a 20th century case echoing the spirit of our Jesus Christ, echoing it. You know what I'm saying? If this apparently he was this case law, this is presidents. All right. So we have to understand what's going on. Continue on with your statement.
Right. So, like I said, this is another example that King Edgar the Peaceful um, is the vicar of Christ, and he's being used in Supreme Court case law right here in so-called America and in the Anglosphere. So I'm just very glad to know that I'm an English woman, I'm an Anglo-Saxon Berber, and my name had always been an English name. I just did not know it. And so I study every day, and I study with other members who are actively studying in this Third Temple English Church. And I'm just happy to be here, and I'm actually happy to be a member of the church, and I'll continue studying under King Clifford Jefferson, who's my Lord. And I'm just happy. Thank you for the invitation tonight.
Not a problem, Countess Walker. Once again, I just want to give you a special honors for taking the courage and being a strong rock. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this takes courage to come up, not just to be here on stage, but to actually articulate and break bread. You know what I'm saying? That is the anointed. You know what I'm saying? You have shown that you are the anointed one as well. You know, and only the anointed one will receive the righteous revelation. That are many are called, but few are chosen. So I just honor you today. Once again, hopefully this will inspire you all to understand that you must give honor to your king and must honor your ancestors by honoring the king. All right. And there's nothing more than honor the king by giving homage to the king by saying, my Lord. And, and it's special to me, to be called my Lord, because I take this position as king as if I was King Edgar, and the fact that I was able to do what he did, what I'm saying, in like fashion, it's unspeakable. Every day I grow in this office, it's a tremendous amount of respect I have for it, and much more respect I have for those who take this work seriously. And for you being here today, you know that's truly a brownie point for you. You know what I'm saying? And thank you for your elaboration on the lesson as well, and that will encourage people as well to exercise their five senses and realize that many are called and few are chosen, and those who are chosen, even though you're called, that doesn't mean you're going to come. Okay, so once again, Countess, I'm gonna look forward to you on the next lesson to read. You know what I'm saying? Because you have breaking the threshold. So I know you, and I know you love to read. You read so much, we gotta put a stop, take it to stop. You know what I'm saying? So once again, your prayers is in my wishes, and I really appreciate you being here in Sister King today. All right.
Thank you, my Lord, for inviting me.
No problem. So with that, we're going to greet at you as we meet at you here at the Third Timothy Church of England. That's in peace and love. Peace.
Peace.
All right, Countess. I'll talk to you soon, Countess Walker.
Thank you.
I'll talk. As a matter of fact, we'll talk tomorrow. Okay.